Hello and welcome to another onboard episode of Inflatable SUP Authority. I'm Derek and today we'll be reviewing the Isle Pioneer Pro 3. This is the 10-foot 6 edition. Be going through how the board feels, doing some maneuverability tracking tests, as well as telling you just my general thoughts. Let's get into the review. Alright guys, so right now we are in kayak formation. Pioneer, so let's just do some kayak tracking strokes just to see how many strokes aside to have to correct. So we use that ramp as a guide. So let's get a little bit of momentum. Okay, let's do this side. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 strokes. What's this guy? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so I would say roughly about 3 strokes aside in kayak formation. Now, much like I did with some of the other kayak hybrid boards, I do have the kayak seat more towards the back, so that does lift the nose up a little bit, making the nose wag a bit more compared to if I had the seat in the middle. And I'm doing this because I also want to stand on this paddleboard and do the test there, so we kind of have it all in one sort of formation. All right, let's just do some kayak stroke maneuverability tests, see how many strokes this thing can do for a 360. So let's get started. 2, 3, 4, 5. Say about 5.5. Which is actually a pretty interesting score. I think some other kayak hybrids did it at about 4. Some initial impressions of the Pioneer Pro, just in kayak formation. It definitely feels very stable. Like if I was a beginner into paddling, kayaking, paddleboarding, whatever you want to call it, I would probably want to hop onto this board just because it feels super stable. Like it feels more like a platform as opposed to something that has more secondary stability where there's more kind of side to side rocking. Like if I kind of go side to side, I'm trying to rock this thing quite a bit and like there's no way I'm falling off. So this is definitely a very stable vessel. It's listed at 34 inches wide, and you can see it's not as pointed. The nose and tail are a little more rounded and fatter. So that gives the board a little more surface area on the water, which allows it to add to some of that stability. But overall, it feels pretty good. Like I do like this little footrest here as well. Somewhere to kind of put your feet. I think I'm supposed to have it a notch closer, but I kind of like having my feet stretched out, so we're kind of rocking it in this formation currently. Paddling, it does feel nice. The seat feels pretty good as well. It's uplifted, so people with lower back pain, they have a little bit of relief with that, aka me. And I also like that the seat has a bit of a backrest as well, sort of made of some sort of carbon material, the inside of the seat is. So yeah, it feels very nice. I just want to do a little thing about the paddle shaft. So I actually think this is kind of a cool feature. You can actually adjust the paddle shaft. So there's 4 adjusting spots. So right now I just switched it to paddleboard formation because I'm going to try to stand in a second here. But you basically just slide it how you'd like. You put the thing right there, close it, there you go. It's also made of a carbon hybrid material, which feels nice in the hands. This is actually one of the nicer kayak hybrid paddles I've held, which is good. There's some other ones that are like aluminum and they're heavier, and they also some of them have like a grip thing right here, and that's blistered my hands in the past. So I do appreciate that IO makes this a carbon hybrid. Feels very nice in the hands. So now that we're in paddleboard formation, we're gonna attempt to stand here. All right, so now let's stand. So I'm doing this a little bit differently. I'm actually kind of seated on the seat a bit. So we're just gonna try to pop up right from the seat to standing. So let's do it. Oh yeah, that was very easy. Yeah, this board is supremely stable. It also feels very rigid. I had a online meeting with Jimmy, who's one of the founders of Isle, and he mentioned how this board is, he thinks this is the most rigid board out there, and I'm just kind of bouncing on it. I have to kind of agree with him actually. Like, a lot of boards, they have a little bit more bend when you're bouncing, but this one is supremely rigid. And that rigidity also kind of helps the stability of this board as well. It really, this does feel like I'm standing on a platform. I would say this is one of the most stable boards I've probably stood on actually. So I think part of it is obviously the materials involved, but also it's the shape of the board. The board is a little bit fatter, even at the nose and tail end. So that in turn gives you a little bit more of a platform to stand on in the water. I also kind of wanted to give a bit of a shout out to these straps over here. These are removable, so you can take them off at any time and put them in any formation, which is actually something I really like. A lot of the paddle boards nowadays, they just have a sort of bungee formation and that's that. But this, you can completely customize the straps. It comes with 5 of them. So you can do it like this, where it's kind of like a cross, or you can do them crisscross, or whichever way you want, which I think is a really cool innovation. Like, I do like this formation because I have a bunch of little stuff with me. So I got like the 2 water bottles, I just clip my dry bag on here and my sandals, and then the kayak paddle. So overall, I'd say I really like how well thought out Isle has kind of, yeah, how the board is very well thought out. Since the wind is fairly minimal, well, if you're gonna do some tracking tests, so we're gonna try to aim for the gray boat. It's a little bit further off there. See how many strokes aside we can do here. So let's just even her out a little bit. And the water is actually very calm, so that definitely helps with this test for sure. All right, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's 5 strokes. Now let's go to the other side. Some drama with the dog behind me here. Okay, so it's 5 strokes one side. Let's do the other side here. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so 5 strokes a side, I'd say. I think that's a pretty fair rating. I was expecting about that just because of how wide the board is. The board is definitely more for people who want something very stable. It's not for tracking performance or like long distance paddles or anything like that. Well, I suppose you could, but you're just going to be a little bit slower in the water just because of the board shape. If you are looking for something that tracks better and it's a little bit quicker in the water, maybe you're like an intermediate paddler, you want sort of the step up in terms of a little bit faster performance in the water, I would recommend the Explorer Pro, which is very similar to this, but it is actually a thinner board, width-wise that is. All right, let's do some maneuverability tests. The water's cooperating with us. It's not very windy. This seems like as good of a place as any. So let's use the blue sailboat as sort of a marker when we're doing our reverse 360 reverse sweep strokes. Can't talk today apparently. All right, let's do it. Two. 3. Wow, look at that. 3 reverse sweep strokes for a 360. That's actually really good. It's a very good maneuverable rating for this board. The average, the all-around average is about, I think, as of now on my website, is 4.5. So this 3 rating is one of the better ones, if not the best, actually. Just at the top of my head. So really good. And it's also felt very stable throughout whenever I was doing it. Like I never felt tippy at all. Like some boards you have to kind of watch out. Now obviously there's calm conditions as well, so that 100% helps. But this board, it would be so easy to learn a lot of these more advanced paddling techniques on. So kudos to Isle for making a very stable board. Okay, now that Mr. Plane has disappeared, we're gonna do some reverse side paddles. We're gonna see how many this board can do. So we're gonna use the brown boat as sort of a marker. So let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, we'll say 11. That's also actually a pretty good rating. I think the tide was kind of affecting the first initial paddles because I'm paddling the board against it, but then the momentum kind of kept up as soon as doing those later paddles because the board is not pushing with the tide. So 11 reverse side paddles is a pretty respectable score. I believe the average is about 12. So again, it's below under. And I think a lot of that has to do with obviously the wider width of the board. The wider the board, usually the more maneuverable it will be. And also typically the more stable it is, but not always, because materials has a big part to play in it. Okay, so like I was saying before, Mr. Plane once again rudely interrupted me. Whenever I'm paddling, whenever I was doing the reverse side paddle and the tide was pushing against the board, and with a lot of other boards, I find that I'm a little bit more unstable and I have to kind of watch my footing, and I have to maybe even feather the paddle a little bit so that I don't lose my balance and fall into the water. But I didn't have to do that with this one at all. It felt just stable throughout, which is very impressive. And I could see that the materials that I was talking about really coming into play here. All right, now we're going to do some harder paddling strokes, kind of see how this board feels. So let's start doing it. Okay, so just sharing my point of view at that speed test. Kind of had some interruptions. I mean, this isn't going to be the fastest board. We'll get that out of the way now. This is probably not the board to bring to SUP races, that's for sure. But having said that, when I was doing some more power strokes, I did like the way the paddle felt. And I also liked how stable the board was throughout. I was able to really get a sort of a good rhythm going. I didn't have to worry too much about the balance of it. So primary stability is just kind of there. So the more and more I paddle this board, the more I think this is just a great board for beginners to really learn their paddle craft and have a stable platform doing it. So random. Some girls just came with their kayaks and they gave me a canned margarita drink. Just shows you how paddlers are kind of a different kind of people. I love it. Anyway, what are my final on-water impressions of the Isle Pioneer 3 Pro? I really feel like this is a supremely stable board. Throughout a lot of maneuverability maneuvers and tracking and speed tests, I felt very stable on this board throughout. Isle has done a really good job of making it both rigid and stable, which is fantastic. I actually think this would be a very underrated yoga board. If you look at the deck padding, it goes all the way across the whole span of the board. And it is one of the more stable boards I've paddled. So I feel like this would be a great board for those doing SUP yoga. Like I said, me standing on it feels like a platform. I haven't necessarily done any yoga or tried to do any yoga on it yet. I might do a future video on that. But yeah, and in terms of kayak hybrid setup, I do like it. I felt the seat was fairly uplifted. I do think that Bolte's Easy Rider seat does have a bit of an advantage over this in terms of the chair being uplifted, but this one does a good job, and it's better than your average Amazon kayak hybrid kit, which is just basically a kayak seat on the deck pad, which is just kind of uncomfortable to begin with. Any cons? I mean, this board is a little bit slower. There's no doubt about it, but it's, you know, you can't blame the board for that at all. It's just the way it's built. Tracking could be maybe a tiny bit better, but like I said, it's the way the board is built. You can't really fault 5 strokes aside on, you know, the board at all, just because it's a little bit wider, right? It's built as such. It's more for stability than performance. But overall, yeah, I think Isle did a fantastic job on this board. Thanks for watching my review on the Isle Pioneer Pro 3. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. If you want to see this product, check out our affiliate links, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for the review.